Elena Martinez returned to the Earth Embassy, the data crystal heavy in her pocket. Outside the curved windows, the sprawling consortium hub station teemed with representatives from hundreds of worlds, their varied forms moving with purpose beneath the artificial sky dome. She placed the crystal on her desk, eyeing it warily before connecting it to her secure terminal. "Computer, analyze contents and display safely," she commanded. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing star charts with vast regions highlighted in pulsing red. Nearly 30% of the charted galaxy was marked as restricted. Beneath each zone lay incident reports spanning centuries, colonies gone silent, research stations destroyed, entire fleets vanishing without distress calls. The evidence seemed damning, yet something didn't align with scientific principles. "Computer, overlay all incident locations with nearby stellar phenomena." The display shifted, and Elena leaned forward. A pattern emerged. The monster appearances correlated with specific types of stellar activity, particularly dying stars and nebula formations rich in certain radiation signatures. This wasn't random predatory behavior. It followed natural celestial events. Her communication panel chimed. "Ambassador, the Consortium Security Council requests your presence," her assistant reported. "They wish to brief you on containment protocols." Elena tucked the crystal into her secure pouch. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." The Security Council chamber felt oppressively solemn when she arrived. Representatives from the 7 most militarily advanced species sat around a crescent table, their expressions grave, or what passed for grave among species whose facial structures ranged from insectoid to cephalopod. General Carrick of the Vespid Protectorate stood at the presentation platform, chitinous armor gleaming under the lights. "Ambassador Martinez, we understand humans have an adventurous nature. This briefing is mandatory for all new member species." The display behind him activated, showing grainy footage of enormous luminous forms moving against the backdrop of stars. The entities pulsed with shifting colors, their sizes dwarfing the nearby spacecraft filming them. "These recordings represent our only close encounters where observers survived," Carrick continued. "Note the consumption patterns." Elena watched closely as one entity approached an automated research station. Rather than destroying it outright, the creature enveloped it, the station's lights flickering as energy readings plummeted. After several minutes, the station remained intact but completely powerless. "They feed primarily on energy," the Arcturian Chancellor explained, his ancient voice barely above a whisper. "But they've been known to consume matter when energy supplies are insufficient." Elena couldn't contain her questions any longer. "Has anyone attempted communication?" These patterns suggest. Communication. The Tory representative barked a sound between laughter and outrage. "Ambassador, these aren't misunderstood sentients. They're cosmic predators, like your Earth sharks, but with intelligence enough to stalk and hunt across star systems. We've lost 17 colonies and countless ships attempting to study them," added the myriad representative, their multiple thought streams creating a harmonic voice. "The only effective strategy is avoidance and, when necessary, immediate evacuation." Elena scrolled through the data on her personal device. The incident frequency has increased over the past century. If they're spreading. "Precisely our concern," Carrick interrupted. "Which is why we've developed early warning systems and established the restricted zones. All member worlds must maintain emergency evacuation protocols and energy dampening technology." As the briefing continued, Elena noticed an interesting omission. No mention of offensive capabilities against these entities. When she inquired, the chamber grew uncomfortably quiet. The Chancellor finally spoke. Conventional weapons pass through them like light through gas. More advanced energy weapons simply feed them. The last species that developed a genuinely effective weapon against them. He paused, mandibles clicking softly. They no longer exist. Elena left the chamber with more questions than answers, and a growing suspicion that fear had prevented the consortium from seeing what might be right before them. The UNSS Discovery's engines hummed at minimal power as they drifted across the boundary into the restricted zone. Captain Rodriguez had ordered all non-essential systems powered down, guided by Lieutenant Ibarra's analysis, suggesting the entities were attracted to specific energy signatures. Passive sensors only, she ordered, her voice calm despite the tension on the bridge. Let's not announce ourselves too loudly. Dr. Chen hovered near the science station, fingers dancing across holographic displays as he analyzed the incoming data. Captain, I'm detecting unusual radiation patterns at coordinates 200 and 27 Mark 43. Nothing like the consortium records indicated. How far? Rodriguez asked. Approximately 6 hours at minimal thrust. The captain noted. Set course, Lieutenant Keller. Maintain low energy profile. As the Discovery altered course, Communications Officer Park received an encrypted transmission from Earth. Captain, it's Ambassador Martinez. The ambassador's face appeared on the main screen, her expression tight with concern. Captain Rodriguez, the consortium knows you've crossed the boundary. They're calling an emergency session to discuss sanctions. We expected as much, Rodriguez replied. Anything else we should know? Yes, I've been doing my own research. Martinez lowered her voice. There are inconsistencies in the historical records. Several accounts describe the entities attempting to form something resembling geometric patterns before attacks. The consortium dismissed this as predatory behavior, but it could be communication, Dr. Chen finished, excitement evident in his voice. Exactly. And there's something else, the Helios science station that was allegedly destroyed last year. I found restricted logs showing it wasn't destroyed at all. It lost power, but remains structurally intact. The crew evacuated per protocol, but the station itself was studied rather than consumed, Rodriguez concluded. This supports our hypothesis. Martinez nodded. I'll do what I can diplomatically. Just be careful, Maya. Always am, the captain promised as the transmission ended. The Discovery continued its approach toward the radiation source, the crew making final preparations for potential contact. Dr. Chen reviewed his communication protocols with Dr. Kim, while Engineering Chief Ortega calibrated the ship's experimental shield harmonics. I've analyzed all known encounter reports, Dr. Kim explained to the assembled team in the conference room. If these entities do communicate through energy patterns, we need to establish clear, simple exchanges. Mathematical sequences are universal. Start with prime numbers, progress to basic equations. Lieutenant Ibarra projected a linguistic model onto the main display. I've mapped potential response patterns based on the limited visual data we have. If they respond, we should be able to detect deliberate patterns versus random energy fluctuations. 4 hours into their approach, the sensor officer's voice came through the shipwide comm. Captain to the bridge. We've got company. Rodriguez and Chen arrived to find the main view screen showing empty space, but the sensor readings told a different story. Massive energy distortions approaching from multiple vectors. They're maintaining distance, the sensor officer reported. 300,000 kilometers and holding. They're observing us, Chen whispered. Rodriguez took her command chair. All stations, prepare for first contact protocols. No aggressive movements or energy spikes. She turned to Chen. Doctor, you're on. Let's see if you can make friends with the monsters. Dr. Chen nodded, his heart racing as he initiated the carefully designed communication sequence. A simple pattern of regulated energy pulses representing the first 10 prime numbers. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then the sensor officer straightened in her chair. Captain, they're responding. Same sequence, exactly mirrored. A collective breath was released across the bridge. Chen smiled broadly. Captain, request permission to proceed to the observation bubble. I want to see them with my own eyes. Rodriguez hesitated, then nodded. Granted, but full safety protocols, and you maintain constant communication. As Chen made his way to the ship's transparent observation dome, the entities began moving closer, their massive forms still invisible to the naked eye, but increasingly active on sensors. The Discovery had just made first contact with the galaxy's most feared beings, and they were answering. Dr. Chen pressed his hand against the transparent aluminum of the observation bubble, his breath fogging slightly against its perfect clarity. The environmental systems hummed quietly around him as he waited for his eyes to adjust to the darkness of space. Are you receiving any visual confirmation? Captain Rodriguez's voice came through his earpiece. Not yet, he replied, scanning the void. But the sensors indicate they're approaching the visible spectrum. Then he saw them. At first, it was merely a shimmer, like heat distortion above hot pavement. Then colours blossomed, rippling waves of blue, violet, and emerald, punctuated by flares of something resembling gold, but somehow more fundamental, as if light itself were being born and transformed. The nearest entity materialized fully, its form defying easy description. A constantly shifting mass of luminescence spanning kilometers, with swirling patterns that seemed almost like writing. I can see them, Chen whispered, activating his recording equipment. There, beautiful. 3 more entities appeared, surrounding the Discovery at a respectful distance. Their movements were synchronized, flowing around the ship in what appeared to be a carefully choreographed dance. They're responding to our presence, but not aggressively, he reported. More like curiosity. In the engineering section, Dr. Tanaka monitored the ship's energy grid when a notification flashed on his console. The experimental quantum resonator, a device designed to study subspace distortions, had activated automatically. Captain, Tanaka called over the comm. The resonator just powered up. I didn't authorize. Shut it down. Rodriguez ordered immediately. Working on it, but Tanaka's voice cut off as he stared at his readings. Captain, they're responding to it. The resonator is creating a harmonic frequency, and they're matching it perfectly. In the observation bubble, Chen watched in awe as the entities began pulsing in synchronized patterns, their massive forms contracting and expanding in rhythm with the ship's resonator. Rather than the chaotic energy absorption described in consortium reports, these movements were precise, mathematical. They're not feeding, Chen realized. They're communicating through resonance patterns. The entities began creating complex geometric forms around the ship, perfect spheres that transformed into intricate polyhedrons, then unfurled into spiraling helices. Each formation held for exactly 12 seconds before shifting to the next. Dr. Kim, Chen called to the neurologist, "Are you seeing this? These aren't random patterns. They are sequential, building in complexity." "I see it," Kim's excited voice came through. They're demonstrating mathematical concepts, showing us they understand complex geometry. This is deliberate communication. Captain Rodriguez joined the conversation. Dr. Tanaka reports the resonator frequencies are being mirrored and enhanced. They could have drained that energy instantly, but instead, they're playing with it. Chen couldn't contain his excitement. Captain, request permission to initiate the next communication protocol. I want to respond to their demonstration with one of our own. What did you have in mind? Music, Chen replied simply. If they understand mathematical patterns, they might comprehend harmonics. Bach's Goldberg variations converted to resonance waves. A moment of silence followed before Rodriguez responded. Do it. As the melodic mathematical patterns of Bach flowed through the ship's external resonators, the entities paused their geometric display. For several heart-stopping moments, they remained motionless, absorbing the new information. Then, to the astonishment of the entire crew, the entities began to move again, no longer in simple geometric patterns, but in flowing, interweaving formations that perfectly complemented the music's structure. The counterpoint of Bach's composition was reflected in their movements, each entity representing a different voice in the fugue. They understand, Chen breathed. Captain, they understand music. Dr. Sarah Kim hadn't slept in 36 hours, but exhaustion couldn't touch her now. The laboratory around her hummed with activity as she refined the translation interface, adjusting parameters based on the massive data streams flowing from the entities. Countless cups of coffee littered her workstation, testament to her relentless focus. The temporal dilation is the key, she explained to Dr. Chen as he entered the lab. Their consciousness operates at a fundamentally different speed than ours. What we perceive as minutes, they experience as mere microseconds. She manipulated the holographic display, stretching a seemingly random energy burst into a complex pattern. When we slow their communications down by a factor of approximately 800, coherent structures emerge. The display transformed the energy signatures into swirling visual representations, recursive patterns that built upon themselves in elegant complexity. It's like trying to understand a symphony by listening to all notes played simultaneously, Chen observed. No wonder the consortium misinterpreted them. Kim nodded. Exactly. We hear noise, but they're composing movements that span what we would consider hours. She tapped a sequence of commands, and the lab filled with a harmonic audio translation of the entity's patterns, hauntingly beautiful tones that shifted and evolved. I've been cataloging recurring motifs, she continued, highlighting sections of the visual display. These appear consistently when we initiate communication. I believe they represent greeting or acknowledgement. And these, she pointed to another set of patterns, appeared after we shared information about Earth and humanity. They're learning about us, Chen breathed. And we're learning about them. Kim activated the primary interface, where translation algorithms processed the latest communication attempt. I've programmed the system to respond at their temporal scale, but translate back to ours for interpretation. The main screen illuminated with translated concepts, asterisk awareness, recognition, different but similar, exchange, history asterisk. They're trying to establish common ground, Kim explained, recognizing us as sentient despite our differences. The ship's intercom activated. Dr. Kim, Dr. Chen, Captain Rodriguez's voice came through. We've received a priority message from Ambassador Martinez. The consortium has dispatched warships to our position. Estimated arrival, 18 hours. Chen frowned. They still think we need rescue. Or they're coming to eliminate what they perceive as a threat, Kim countered grimly. Either way, we need to establish clearer communication before they arrive. She turned back to her interface, fingers dancing across controls as she implemented a new approach. I'm going to try something different. Instead of translating their language into ours, I'll create a hybrid visual language, a third option that might bridge the gap. The system projected a new set of patterns, structured energy pulses that incorporated elements of both human mathematics and the entity's resonance patterns. The response came almost immediately, a brilliant cascade of light that the sensors struggled to record in its entirety. The translation algorithms processed for several minutes before producing a result that made both scientists catch their breath. Asterisk finally found. Understanding ones. Darkness coming. Need help asterisk. Sarah, Chen said quietly. I think we've just received their actual message. The one they've been trying to deliver for thousands of years. Kim nodded slowly, the implications settling like a weight. We need to tell the captain. Whatever the darkness is, it sounds like a warning. As they prepared to leave the lab, the entities outside the ship began forming new patterns, urgent, repeated sequences that the translation system interpreted as a single concept. Asterisk time. Limited asterisk. I don't think they're talking about the approaching consortium ships, Chen said. Something else is coming. Something worse. The observation deck transformed into an improvised communications center as the Discovery's crew gathered to witness the Luminae's full story. Captain Rodriguez stood beside Dr. Chen and Dr. Kim, her face illuminated by the swirling light patterns filling the chamber. The ship's primary systems operated at minimal capacity to allow maximum sensor focus on the unprecedented exchange. Recording at maximum fidelity, Lieutenant Park confirmed from his station, every frequency, every pattern. The largest Luminae entity positioned itself directly before the observation windows, its vast form contracted to a more focused state. Through the translation interface, it began sharing a story that stretched across billions of years. Images formed in the holographic display, stellar nurseries where energy coalescence first gained awareness, the slow evolution of consciousness within plasma states, the gradual discovery of other life forms throughout the cosmos. The Luminae showed their first encounters with carbon-based life, their attempts to understand creatures so different from themselves. They evolved in the hearts of stars, Dr. Chen whispered, awestruck. Pure energy achieving sentience. The story continued, showing the rise of countless civilizations. The Luminae attempted contact with each one, hoping to share knowledge accumulated across eons, only to be met with weapons, fear, and retreat. The images grew darker as they showed the first appearance of the hollows, regions of space where physics itself seemed to unravel. Dr. Tanaka leaned forward, eyes wide behind his glasses. That's impossible. They're showing complete breakdown of fundamental constants, gravity, electromagnetic force, even strong nuclear interactions just dissolving. The Luminae's history revealed their desperate attempts to warn younger species about these anomalies, showing how they had guided willing civilizations away from approaching hollows, helping them relocate to safer regions. The translation system rendered their explanation in fragmented concepts. Asterisk cosmological decay, natural process, cyclical, preventable, need cooperation asterisk. They're saying these hollows are like natural disasters, Kim interpreted. Not malevolent, just dangerous, and they've been trying to help species survive them. The display shifted to show successful evacuations alongside haunting emptiness, where stubborn civilizations had refused warnings and perished. The images carried an emotional weight beyond mere information, sorrow for those lost, determination to prevent further losses. Captain Rodriguez crossed her arms, processing the implications. How long have the consortium species been running from the very beings trying to save them? According to cross-referenced historical records, the science officer replied, approximately 12,000 standard years. A new sequence began forming in the translation display as the Luminae addressed a direct question to humanity. *Y, different, approach, not fear *. Dr. Chen looked to Rodriguez, who nodded her permission to respond. He stepped forward, facing the magnificent light being. Curiosity is fundamental to human nature, he explained, the translation system converting his words into patterns the Luminae could comprehend. We prefer understanding to fear. When we encounter something unknown, our first instinct is to learn, not flee. The Luminae's response illuminated the entire chamber. Precious, quality, rare, necessary, complete understanding *. Kim's eyes widened as the translation clarified. They're saying that quality, curiosity over fear, is extremely rare among spacefaring species. They'd been searching for someone who would stop and listen. Outside the observation windows, the other Luminae entities began forming a complex, synchronized pattern that the translation rendered simply. Show, hollow, approaching, urgent *. They want to show us something, Rodriguez realized, something more immediate than their history. The largest entity pulsed once in confirmation, then began expanding its form, preparing to transport the Discovery to witness firsthand the threat they had been warning about for millennia. The Galactic Consortium's emergency chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from all member species packed the tiered seating, their murmurs creating a discordant symphony of concern. At the center platform, Ambassador Elena Martinez stood alongside her evidence, holographic displays showing footage from the Discovery's encounter with the Luminae. The entities you feared for millennia are not predators, she continued, her voice steady despite the hostile atmosphere. They are the galaxy's oldest sentient species, and they've been trying to warn us about a genuine threat. The chamber's main screen displayed Dr. Kim's translation interface, showing the complex light patterns alongside their interpreted meanings. Martinez advanced to the most critical evidence, footage of the Discovery traveling alongside a Lumina guide to witness a hollow. The recording showed a distant star system where space itself seemed to warp and darken. Stars near the anomaly appeared distorted, their light bending unnaturally before being extinguished. The measurements indicated complete breakdown of physical laws within the affected region, expanding slowly but inexorably. This is what they've been trying to warn us about, Martinez explained. These hollows are natural cosmic phenomena that threaten inhabited regions. The Luminae have been attempting to guide younger species away from them for thousands of years. General Carrick of the Vespid Protectorate rose from his seat, mandibles clicking in agitation. Convenient explanations from humans who have been in contact with these creatures for mere weeks. We have thousands of years of documented attacks. Not attacks, Martinez corrected firmly. Failed communication attempts. Their consciousness operates on a vastly different temporal scale than ours. What appeared to be energy consumption was actually careful examination. They were trying to understand our technology to communicate with us. The Tory representative slammed his clawed hand on the podium. Humans are compromised. Their minds have been altered by prolonged exposure. I moved to quarantine Earth immediately and dispatch a cleansing fleet to their position. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, some supporting the Tory's motion, others calling for calmer assessment. Through the chaos, the ancient Myriad representative glided to the center floor, their crystalline form catching the light. The chamber quieted. When the oldest council member spoke, protocol demanded attention. For 17 parallel thought streams, the philosopher-diplomat began, "I have contemplated the human evidence. Their data contains no logical inconsistencies. If these luminae wished harm, the human vessel would not have returned." The myriad turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. Our greatest failure may not be our fear, but our refusal to question it. 10,000 years of avoiding instead of understanding. Before the debate could resume, the chamber's central platform illuminated with unexpected brilliance. A carefully controlled luminae manifestation took shape, a fraction of its true form, deliberately shaped to appear less threatening. Ambassador Martinez had arranged this demonstration with Captain Rodriguez, but the reaction exceeded her worst expectations. Dozens of representatives fled toward the exits. Security personnel drew weapons. The Arcturian Chancellor nearly collapsed in shock. Martinez raised her voice above the panic. "This is a controlled communication interface. The Luminae representative is thousands of light years away, appearing via quantum entanglement. You are in no danger." She stepped deliberately beside the shimmering light form. This is what courage looks like, facing the unknown rather than running from it. Humanity doesn't claim to be strongest or smartest, but today we might be the bravest. The chaos gradually subsided as the Luminae remained motionless, projecting only gentle rhythmic patterns that the translation system rendered as asterisk greeting, respect, patience, understanding asterisk. Across the chamber, the myriad representative glided forward, multiple appendages raised in the ancient gesture of peaceful approach. "I will hear what this ancient one has to say," the myriad announced. "Who else among us will choose understanding over fear?" One by one, other representatives began to return to their seats, curiosity gradually overcoming millennia of ingrained terror. The lunar conference facility buzzed with activity unprecedented in consortium history. Representatives from 27 species had traveled to Earth's satellite despite lingering hesitation, the imminent threat of the hollows proving more compelling than ancient fears. The central dome housed a massive holographic projection showing the expanding anomaly that had consumed the uninhabited Proxos system. Dr. Tanaka guided the assembled dignitaries through the technical data, his usual shyness forgotten in the urgency of the moment. "The breakdown begins at the quantum level," he explained, manipulating the display to show subatomic dissolution. Fundamental forces decouple in a cascading sequence. First electromagnetism, then the weak nuclear force, followed by strong nuclear interaction, and finally gravity itself. The projection shifted to show time-lapse imagery of the hollow's expansion. Without intervention, this particular anomaly will reach the Vespid colony world Ketra within 17 standard years, and the Arcturian homeworld within 38. General Carrick, who had been among the most vocal opponents of human claims, now studied the data with grim focus. "How many of these hollows have been detected?" 7 active throughout the charted galaxy, answered Dr. Chen, with 3 more showing early formation signs in remote regions. The Arcturian Chancellor, bent with age but sharp-minded, gestured toward the human Luminae research team. "You claim to have developed defensive measures." Dr. Tanaka nodded, activating a secondary display. "Working with Luminae knowledge and human implementation approaches, we've created a prototype quantum anchoring system." The hologram showed a network of interconnected devices surrounding a simulated hollow. These generators create overlapping fields that reinforce fundamental constants within the affected space. It stabilizes reality itself, added Dr. Kim, who had joined the presentation remotely from the Discovery. Think of it as creating a framework that prevents physics from unraveling. The Tory representative, still skeptical but practical, growled from the back row. Resources required. Substantial, Dr. Tanaka acknowledged. Each anchor point requires rare elements and significant energy output. A complete network surrounding an active hollow would require approximately the resources of a mid-sized colony world over 3 years. Murmurs spread through the assembly until the myriad representative's harmonious voice cut through the chatter. A lesser cost than evacuation of entire star systems, and considerably less than extinction. The lunar facility's doors opened to admit a human-designed containment vessel, a 2-meter sphere housing a controlled Luminae presence. The sphere approached the center of the chamber and projected a complex light pattern at the translation system rendered into words on the main display. Cycles, predictable, preventable, cooperation, necessary, time, limited. The Arcturian Chancellor studied the pattern, then addressed the Luminae directly for the first time in recorded history. How many civilizations before us have you tried to warn? The answer appeared on the display. Thousands. Since. Awakening. Billions. Years. Past. And how many listened? Asked the Chancellor, ancient voice barely audible. 17 survived. Hundreds. Lost. Understanding. Rare. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembly. The Chancellor's mandibles clicked softly in the equivalent of a bitter laugh. 10,000 years of running from our would-be saviors. Dr. Chen stepped forward. There's more. The Luminae historical records show that these hollow events occur in 5,000-year cycles. The current cycle is showing heightened intensity compared to previous ones. Meaning? Asked General Carrick. Meaning we don't just need to contain individual hollows, Chen replied gravely. We need to understand why they're forming more frequently and with greater intensity. The Luminae have theories, but they need our help to investigate properly. The myriad representative glided to the center of the chamber. Then we shall provide it. Who stands with us? One by one, representatives rose from their seats, even the reluctant Tory. Fear was giving way to determination as a galactic response began to form. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood at the viewport of Convergence Station, watching the rhythmic pulse of shield generators extending into the distance. 5 years of relentless work had transformed theoretical protection into tangible reality. The massive structure represented something unprecedented. Technology developed through collaboration between dozens of species who, until recently, could barely tolerate being in the same room. Quite a view, Ambassador Martinez said, joining her at the window. Now bearing the title of High Coordinator, she'd become the diplomatic face of the greatest cooperative effort in galactic history. Sometimes, I still can't believe we pulled it off, Rodriguez replied, gesturing toward the bustling command center behind them, where Solarian engineers worked alongside Vespid tacticians and human programmers. The ambassador smiled. Do you remember what General Carrick said when the first shield prototype successfully contained the test anomaly? Rodriguez laughed. Something like, perhaps humans are useful after all. High praise from a Vespid. Martinez turned as her assistant approached with a data tablet. The Tory fleet has successfully deployed the final anchor points around the Cygnus Hollow. That's the third one completely contained. Throughout the station, hundreds of screens displayed real-time data from shield networks across the galaxy. Each successful deployment represented a star system saved, millions of lives protected from the dissolving touch of the hollows. Dr. Chen entered the observation deck, accompanied by his Lumina research partner. A portion of the vast entity contained within a specially designed interface chamber that allowed more direct interaction. After years of cooperation, the light being had adopted the name Scholar for easier reference. The latest data from the Sagittarius monitoring posts confirms our theory, Chen announced, excitement evident in his voice. The hollows are responding to the anchoring systems. 3 of the developing anomalies have shown reduced expansion rates. The Scholar's light patterns pulsed in what the humans had come to recognize as satisfaction. The translation system rendered their thoughts. Asterisk understanding, growing. Progress, pleasing asterisk. Rodriguez nodded toward a group of younger officers nearby, cadets from a dozen worlds, including species that had been bitter enemies just years earlier. Look at them. 5 years ago, that scene would have been unimaginable. Fierce separates, Martinez observed. Common purpose unites. The station's communication system chimed, and the main screen activated to show the Arcturian Chancellor. The ancient alien looked reinvigorated despite the years of intense work. "High Coordinator, Captain Rodriguez," the Chancellor greeted. "The Myriad has just confirmed successful activation of the Holian Shield network. All readings nominal." Cheers erupted across the command center as the news spread. The Holian system had been projected to fall to a hollow within 3 years. Now it would survive. "A historic moment," Martinez replied, "and perfect timing for the ceremony." Later, in the vast assembly hall of Convergence Station, representatives from every consortium world gathered. At the center stood a memorial beacon designed by Dr. Kim, a monument listing all civilizations lost to misunderstanding and fear throughout the millennia of Lumine records. The Myriad representative, who had been first to stand with humanity, presented the consortium's highest honor, not to a human, but to the Lumina Collective, officially recognizing them as the galaxy's eldest protectors rather than its greatest monsters. As the ceremony concluded, Captain Rodriguez found herself standing beside a newly commissioned officer, a young Tauri whose species had once been among the most fearful of the monsters. "Is it true," the young officer asked hesitantly, "that humans never feared the Luminae when you first encountered them?" Rodriguez considered the question carefully. "We were cautious," she replied honestly. "But we chose to ask questions before making assumptions. Sometimes that's all the difference needed between fear and understanding." The officer nodded thoughtfully. "My hatchlings will grow up in a very different galaxy than I did." "A brighter one," Rodriguez agreed, watching the Luminae representatives mingle freely among the gathered species, their light illuminating faces that now showed wonder instead of terror.